to Darwin's infamous trip aboard the Beagle and the publication of his book, The Origin of Species, in 1859, fossils and the rock record provided the opportunity to peer into the Earth's past and ascertain the age of the Earth extending beyond the previously assumed 5,000 years, to what seemed an infinite span of millions of years. This discovery of deep time, as coined by John McPhee in his 1980 book Basin and Range, challenged scientists just as Darwin and evolution challenged the fixity of species. An unknown world, a world in which humans were not there to witness, was unveiling a new cosmological imagination to be explored. One form of this speculation occurs at the Oxford Museum, where research labs, libraries, and classrooms flank a natural history museum in the Central Court. The rocks of the British Isles, exotic and native flora, and diversity of fauna are contained, yet vibrate with an intensity of a cosmological imagination, grappling between varied macrocosm within the meditative microcosm. The ever-expanding, alluring, mutable universe is in focus, holding the blur at bay. Dr. Henry Wentworth Ackland formed a committee in 1849 at Oxford University to encourage a museum and education facility that would house the natural and medical sciences under one building. In a long process which included a design competition, advisement from Ruskin, and search for funding, substantial completion occurred in 1859. The building was designed by the Irish firm Dean and Woodward. Ackland sets up the principal aim of the museum to situate the student within the cosmological macrocosm of the Earth, and as the universe and the cosmological microcosm of the individual quest of rigorous science to explain a detail of our world. At the most basic level, the museum exaggerates the didactic intention of ornamentation through its internal meditation upon the wonders of the natural world as a transcendental creation. Entering the Oxford Museum and heading east, one enters the Central Court. The expansive glass ceiling is supported by wrought iron spandrels, delicately stenciled with an abstract pattern, resting on cast iron columns. As Trevor Garnham mentions in his book Oxford Museum, the Central Court is not only similar to the monastic cloister, but maintains a stronger connection. The 9 piers create 8 main openings on each side, and the court is 112 feet square, the exact number of openings and dimensions of the cloister at Westminster Abbey. Where the center of the monastic cloister remained empty to express the monks' retreat from the world, this central court is an excess of information donated from the natural world in order to encourage the comparative studies. The perfect square of the cloister central court space is contrasted against the rectilinear cathedral typology, which is created by 4 rows of columns. The 5 aisles, with preference given to the central aisle, are formed by the 4 rows of cast iron columns reaching up to the sky. With the translucent light coming through the glass roof and the foliated ornamentation of iron forming leaves, the central court is transformed into a modernized forest of amazing crispness and delicacy. Indeed, together with the imaginative variety lavished on the ornament, resulting in a hothouse full of iron-wrought plants. And that's from Carolyn Van Eck. However, there is another way in which to read the central court. Trevor Garnham has the following insight, quote, "Standing beside one of the gigantic dinosaur skeletons, the visitor might alternatively have the sense of being inside the body of some great creature, the iron structure itself a kind of skeleton, the glass roof, the scales, a fitting image for an institution devoted to microscopically peering into the anatomy of a plant and animal life." Unquote. At the beginning of the 19th century, Cuvier was reassembling discovered fossils into animals that the public had never seen before. It was not until 1840 when the word dinosaur was coined by Richard Owen. More than 10 years later, Owen, working alongside sculptor Waterhouse Hawkins, constructed a series of full-scale models to display at the Crystal Palace during the Great Exhibition in 1851. As a form of publicity for the exhibition, a dinner was held inside the reconstructed body of an iguanodon. These images reflect the early struggle to represent such concepts and forms through elementary fragments that were not only foreign but invisible and incongruous to the contemporary way of living. An attempt to reconstruct a reality that vanished millions of years ago, it was easier to construct a space or image that someone could inhabit. The architecture of the central court at the Oxford Museum is an expression of unfurling deep time by revealing processionally various rocks of the British Isles. The shafts have been carefully selected under the direction of the professor of geology from the quarries which furnish examples of many of the most important rocks of the British Islands. There are vibrant and multifarious column shafts that demarcate the cloister space of the central court and suggest an elongation of time. On the west arcade, there are specific igneous rocks, particularly granite, from Scotland, and this suggests the Precambrian era. On the north arcade, metamorphic rocks, or limestones from Ireland, suggest the Paleozoic period. The east arcade goes back to igneous rocks, but they are of no particular region or period. And finally, on the south arcade, metamorphic rocks, again limestone, but also some Mesozoic marble from England and Wales. As evident, the arcades parallel each other in context as well as direction, creating zones of igneous rock in the west and east arcades and metamorphic rocks in the north and south. With this parallel, there is also a movement from specific to general and back to specific as one circles the periphery. Enhancing the organic attribute of the geologic columns, the delicately carved capitals of plants stretched the limits of botanical classification. The original 46 capitals were carved by the O'Shea brothers, who came with Woodward from Ireland. Even though they were asked to leave by the university, their influence had a tremendous impact on the artistic quality of the building. Plants from the botanical gardens were selected each morning by the O'Sheas and Professor Phillips, and the sculpted ornamentations were executed as though the plants were being botanically classified but artistically energized. The capitals follow a less structured organization compared to the geological column shafts, but the following are some representations: aquatic plants, lilies, ferns, evergreens, climbers, orchids, ginger, and tropical fruits such as bananas or pineapples. In contrast to the medieval cloister, where the center remained empty to suggest the chosen life away from the superfluous society, the Oxford Museum fills the center with an exhibit of all forms of animal life, past and present. Some of the collection in the central court include stuffed birds, animals, shells, sponges, insects, reptiles, including extinct reptiles, fish, skeletons of bats, humans, apes, lions, rodents, and there are also metals, chlorides, oxides. The distended cabinets become a site of wonder and curiosity typical of the Victorian time period. The cosmological view of taxonomy recovers the display as a structural bind that also reveals the detail. The classification within the Oxford Museum utilizes the record of geology, rock, and the taxonomy of botany and animals, yet evades the strict and fixed arrangement because it seeks something outside itself. The cosmological imagination allows for the macro to become the micro through a didactic representation evoking meditative intellectual thought. The central court becomes this expression. It spatially and temporally zooms in and out of focus, the sphere of the universe and of an individual thought. The echoes of the cloister, bound by deep time, are capped by artistic flora, and the aisles of the cathedral, exhibiting cabinets of wonder, portray and exude, conquest and transcend the richness and vitality of the material, past and present, natural and organic world.